So, in this entire large canvas that you have drawn for almost 40 years, I, as I told you, was looking for a hero. And to me, the Nairs, their continuous resistance, their despite untold cruelties, their regrouping and refighting, they to me emerge as the heroes of the book. But two things struck me, and one is the empowerment that the Moplahs got, thanks to Tipu, doing what he did, and that sort of reflected during the Khilafat movement with the Moplah riots. Their anger against the Nairs and the venom with which they went about, you know, unleashing the riots is there. The second, of course, is what you have also touched upon, is the recurring theme of an Muslim Indian ruler asking for Afghans and others to come and help and again basically resubjugate India to Muslim rule. So these are two things that sort of recur, where clearly faith is above any sense of any other identity. So could you touch on this a little bit?
Yeah, in fact, what you just touched upon is very beautifully summarized by Sridhar Menon, who writes about this entire period of the military regime of Tipu was called the Padayotta Kalam in Malayalam. And he writes, and I am quoting him, the brutalities committed by the Mysorean troops led to large-scale migration from Malabar of people belonging to all strata of society. The hard-working peasants took refuge in the forests and jungles, and so agriculture was ruined. What was once a flourishing, fertile country now assumed the appearance of a cheerless desert. The Nair gentry was dispossessed and shorn of its military and political power. The decline in agriculture resulted in economic impoverishment also. Trade and commerce declined steadily. The cultivation of pepper, on which depended the economic prosperity of the country, that was suspended. The once flourishing seaports of Kerala now presented a deserted look. Gold and silver, which the country had amassed by centuries of trade with foreign countries, virtually disappeared from the land. To add to the economic distress, the Mysorean invasions created a cleavage between the Mapilas, these were converts, the Moplahs, and the Hindus, and destroyed social harmony. The former had helped the Mysore sultans in the campaigns in Kerala and aroused the active hostility of the Hindu population. Now, with the expulsion of Tipu, the Mapilas, who had enjoyed political power for more than 30 years, lost their privileged status. They were unable to reconcile themselves to this discomfiture and were therefore thereafter in a state of general revolt against established authority. The Mapila outbreaks of the 19th century was thus in a way a legacy of the Mysorean invasions.
Exactly.
So, he does that even in Coorg. They're called the Kodava Mapilas. So you convert a set of people. They carry the same surname, but they are Muslim now. And so there's so much of social tension between them. And as long as the Mysore Sultanate existed, these people felt empowered. But once Tipu died, they no longer had the power left. And so that led to resentment, that led to long-standing,
Exactly.
a cleavage between them. Then that is what resulted in the Moplah carnage of 1921, where I think a century or more of all that suppressed thing suddenly burst out like a volcano, and you had the carnage of the Hindu men, women, and children who were killed. And this just happened around the Khilafat time. And even for the Moplah carnage, you had someone like Gandhi saying, I don't consider the Moplahs as people who are attacking. They were just true believers of their faith and stuff like that.
And again, you have in history, even in our books that we read, talking about it as a mutiny against the British.
Yeah,
and not really
peasant revolt against the landed Jenmis and all that sort.
So that is one thing that it struck me. I said, my God, this has a history behind, and the reason for the pent up anger shows. Now, then you have beautifully titled the last battle as the sun sets on Srirangapatna. When I was reading that last battle, I found myself rooting for the British. Now, knowing what the British did thereafter to India, I felt so sad about my country. What did we do? I mean, here is a tyrant whom I wanted to see annihilated, but I was rooting for a people and a power that robbed me, that that dismantled my education, my judiciary. What didn't the British do? So, how does a historian? How do you look at our period? The 18th century, the 19th century, and ultimately, the fall of Srirangapatna, the fall of the Marathas, 1818. How does and then you have also extensively written about the freedom period with Savarkar, knowing nothing of what the British did is unknown to you. Their cruelties, the cellular jail. How do you reconcile? I found it so difficult. I really found it difficult. Here I am rooting for the British. Really, it was so difficult for me.
Viscerally, or actually hoping
Yes,
that they win.
yeah, I wanted people to die, but then I knew, damn, this is the British, and they are going to control Mysore now. I mean, it felt
I think you were not alone in feeling so. Even his own contemporaries wanted him killed as soon as
yeah.
possible. That's why on the last day, last few days, weeks, there was nobody to support him. Not only the Hindus, even the Muslims. I mean, you had people like Mir Sadiq, who's his prime minister, Mir Nadim, who's the Kiledar of Srirangapatna. All of them turning traitor. So if religion was the bind or whatever. So after the third Anglo-Mysore war, he had got so insecure, the paranoia was so much intense, his left hand could not trust his left hand, and so so there was nothing that he literally divested power in illiterate people, sycophants, who would boost his megalomania and this very, very bloated self-image, that I am superior and I'm greater than God sometimes, and all of that. So in that scenario where you're putting important positions in administration or in the military and navy to people who did not possess the merits for that, we see him literally going step by step towards his own destruction. I've often called it like a Greek tragedy, unfolding. And that last day, the scene, in the Srirangapatna fort, where the British have literally come and encircled, and the breach has been effected in the fort, but the Sultan is kept ignorant of that. He is just taken to some place where a few stones have fallen and said, there's no breach, and he believes everything. There's one fellow, Syed Ghafoor, or someone who's a confidant. He is able to see this breach, and he writes also that he wanted to go and shake him up and say, can you please wake up and smell the coffee, seeing what is happening in your own fort. But before that, he is killed. um, Even that day, on the 4th of May 1799, you literally have that morning, he's not aware that the British are probably a few kilometers away from where he's sitting. And that morning, he's having incantations done. He's looking at his own face in a iron pot full of oil. There's some ritual that is going on. Brahmin astrologers are doing other things. He's giving grants to them. He was so full of insecurity that astrology and all this meant a lot to him. And at that time, when he's just finished this whole ritual and sitting to eat, he gets the news that the British are right there. And even then, so Mir Sadiq takes away all the Mysore soldiers on the pretext of paying salaries, and they're locked up in a room. So there is nobody to defend the fort. Happily, they make a entry from the breach. One of the Mysoreans show a white handkerchief, and the British enter regiment by regiment into the fort. And this man then realizes, the precarious situation that he is in, and that he was being lied to all the time. And so he decides that, okay, let me try to. There are plans for him to run away, which were there, which also people say, no, no, he said to live like a jackal for 100 years, it's worse. I live like a tiger for one day. All these are some dialogues someone has made from maybe Bhagwan Gidwani's novel. But in reality, there were plans that French tell him that the best thing is you run away from somewhere. He doesn't do it eventually, but he has made plans. He started moving some of his treasury, some elephants and women, and everyone is kept ready. But there were two secret gates. One was closed by Mir Sadiq so that this man doesn't escape. Another gate he tries to go, that also Mir Nadim, who's the Kiledar, doesn't let him go that side. And when he orders him to open it, he just looks the other way. And that is when he realizes, treachery has permeated every brick in Srirangapatna. And he sits on his own favorite mare and goes to fight. The only person who accompanies him is his physician, this guy called Raja Khan. And what can he do? I mean, he feels his being present on the battlefield is going to somehow enthuse the Mysorean soldiers. but the mayor is killed. He also hurts his leg. The leg is already hurt for a long time, because in Travancore, when he faces the Netum Kotta debacle, he falls and his leg is in a perennial limp after that. So his leg is, and he tumbles and falls amidst a heap of dead bodies. And that scene which plays out, then he's literally seeing his own kingdom coming to an end. There are volleys of bombs and missiles going. Suddenly there's some huge explosion that happens, and hundreds of people, their limbs are dismembered and everything falls, putrid flesh everywhere. And in the midst of this fellow is stuck within dead bodies. And the English soldiers who come there, they don't even know that this is a sultan fighting there. They thought he's a common soldier. By then his turban is gone, so bald headed. And they see his bejeweled sword belt, and to take that they attack him. And one of them takes a gun and he tries to strike back, and that's when one of the other soldiers puts a gun on his temple and he is eliminated. Now, by the sunset, the British are wondering, where is Tipu Sultan? Has he hidden into the women's apartments, or has he run away? The family also doesn't know where he is gone. There's that long scene that is painted in that chapter of how the British come and have interview with the sons of Tipu, who are very scared. They are young boys, in their teens. They have to meet the enemy. So what has happened to our father? You don't know. And after a lot of interval, they come. There's a ritual of a carpet to be laid, and then they come and sit there. They have, I think Alan says, they were almost like deer who are caught in the forest. That is the kind of fright they had. They very openly say, we don't know where our father has gone. And then a search party goes of Alan, Beatson, and David Baird and others. And somewhere in the midst of that heap of dead bodies, they see this Raja Khan, and who's still alive. And he says, the last I saw the Sultan was somewhere there. And so they go there, and amidst a heap of dead bodies, they find the corpse of this man. His eyes are open, and his body is warm, and his hand is still clasping the sword. And they say, we were very scared that he may suddenly spring up and attack us, because they were quite scared of his mercurial behavior. And so they said, we felt the pulse, and that is when we realized that he's dead. And we raised a hurrah, and the body was then sent back for a ritual funeral. And then the family, which consisted of 25 children, 13 boys and 12 girls, and some 600 women from his zanana, they were all packed off in installments and sent to Vellore, to this fort of Vellore, where later they tried to create a rebellion, the Vellore Mutiny. And then the British thought they have had enough of them, and they were all packed off and sent to Calcutta, and right under the Governor General's nose. And the family, parts of it still remain in Calcutta. I think in some of them in abject poverty. So the arch of this house of Hyder, 40 years of the interregnum, the interval is all that they ruled. They came from poverty, where those two boys being beaten in a kettle drum, to the family which stays now in poverty. A lot of people say it's probably poetic justice. They went back to where they came from. But in the middle, you had these 40 years, which I think changed the destiny of India. As you said, this was probably the last bastion of resistance. After this, steady capitulation to British imperialism was made possible. So yeah, somewhere your tone there, thinking, do you support this man?
Yes.
Is he the best resistor this country could have produced against the British, or do we root for the people who are probably worse than him in terms of subjugating us?